The conversation around this team has officially shifted, and if you've been paying attention to what's coming out of the combine and the national outlets, you can feel it building. The biggest question right now isn't just about free agency money or cap gymnastics. It's about the future of the tight end position in Philadelphia, and whether this franchise is finally ready to make a bold first-round investment there. Dallas Goedert is a free agent. That alone changes everything. For years, the Eagles have had stability at tight end, but now, with Goedert heading into his 9th season and turning 31, the reality is staring this front office in the face. Even if he were to return, the long-term outlook at the position is uncertain, and beyond him, the cupboard is bare. That's why the name Kenyon Sadiq keeps coming up over and over again. According to Pro Football Focus, tight end is the Eagles' biggest need, and they specifically point to Sadiq out of Oregon as the target. This isn't just casual speculation. Sadiq led all FBS tight ends in 2025, with 8 receiving touchdowns. He ranked top 10 in deep receptions of 20-plus yards with 9, and also finished top 10 in contested catches with 7. That's production, real production. Now let's talk about what happened in Indianapolis, because that's where things exploded. At the NFL Combine, Sadiq ran a 4.39 in the 40-yard dash. That is the fastest time by a tight end since at least 2003. His 1.54 10-yard split would have ranked among the top 12 wide receivers at this year's Combine. Think about that for a second. A tight end moving like that. He also posted a 43.5-inch vertical and elite broad jump numbers. Next Gen Stats gave him a top 3 overall athleticism score of 95 and even projected a 28% probability that he makes a Pro Bowl at some point in his career. Those are rare metrics, and yet there are still questions. His hands have been described as inconsistent. He did not participate in field drills at the Combine, leaving that part of the evaluation unanswered. But from a pure athletic standpoint, this is one of the most explosive tight end prospects in recent memory. NBC Sports Philadelphia's mock draft has the Eagles selecting Sadiq at pick 23. The logic is simple. Whether or not Goedert returns, the Eagles need to think ahead. They haven't drafted a tight end in the first round since Keith Jackson in 1988. That's how long it's been. Sadiq is described as similar in the sense that he can run and catch like a wide receiver. In today's NFL, that's what you want. A matchup nightmare. A player who can stretch the seam and threaten safeties. There's also another layer here. Multiple reports suggest Goedert definitely will not return to Philadelphia. If that holds true, the urgency increases dramatically, but it doesn't stop there. There are voices suggesting that the Eagles could be aggressive in reshaping the offense entirely. One column argues the team should target Sadiq along with receivers like Casey Concepcion and Gurmy Bernard, even if it means considering major financial decisions involving A.J. Brown. That's how serious some analysts believe the offensive retooling needs to be. At the same time, the Eagles hold pick 23 and pick 54. Pre-combined consensus had Sadiq going 19th overall. After that 4.39, many believe he won't even be there at 23, so now the conversation becomes strategic. Do you sit and hope he falls? Do you trade up, or do you pivot? And while the offense is clearly a talking point, there are defensive storylines brewing too. There's outside speculation linking the Eagles to Max Crosby in trade discussions, but the counter-argument is clear. Defense wasn't the main issue in 2025. Investing over $30 million per year on that side of the ball might limit the ability to fix offensive problems. On the back end, there's also discussion about safety. The combine workouts were strong across the board at that position. That could impact the market for Reed Blankenship. The Eagles might want him back at the right price, but there's reportedly a walkaway number. If they do look at safety in the first round, Dylan Thieneman has been mentioned as an intriguing name. At 6 foot 201 pounds, he posted 6 interceptions as a freshman at Purdue before transferring to Oregon and thriving closer to the line of scrimmage. And then there's the long-term planning philosophy this organization is known for. ESPN's mock draft ties the Eagles to Caleb Lomu, an offensive tackle out of Utah, with the idea that Lane Johnson is approaching 36 and missed 8 games in 2025. This front office has always believed in drafting successors before they're desperately needed, so where does that leave us? You have a franchise quarterback in Jalen Hurts who has built a reputation around willingness and meticulous preparation, dating back to his conversations with Lincoln Riley before transferring to Oklahoma. The coaching staff knows his mentality. The question now is what weapons will surround him next season? Is the future of this offense built around adding an athletic freak like Kenyon Sadiq? Is tight end truly the biggest priority? Or should the Eagles look elsewhere in round 1 and address the position later? Because if Sadiq is sitting there at 23 and Dallas Goedert is truly gone, this decision could define the next phase of the offense. So let me ask you directly, if Kenyon Sadiq is on the board when the Eagles are on the clock, are you making that pick without hesitation, or are you going in a completely different direction? And this is where it gets even more fascinating, because the decision at pick 23 is not happening in isolation. It's connected to everything else this organization is weighing behind the scenes. If Dallas Goedert is indeed not returning, then we're not just talking about replacing a name on the depth chart. We're talking about replacing a foundational piece of the passing game. Goedert has been a reliable intermediate target, a player who can work the middle of the field, block in the run game, and give Jalen Hurts a security blanket on third down. That role doesn't just disappear without consequences. So if you draft Kenyon Sadiq, you're not drafting a traditional tight end in the classic mold. You're drafting a weapon. His profile screams vertical threat. 8 touchdowns in 2025, 9 receptions of 20+ yards, 7 contested catches, and then those combine numbers that basically force the entire league to pay attention. A 4.39 40 at his size is not normal. A 43.5-inch vertical is not normal. A 95 athleticism score from Next Gen Stats is not normal. But here's the tension. Athleticism does not automatically equal refinement. Reports have pointed to inconsistency with his hands. He skipped field drills at the combine. So the Eagles would be betting on upside, on development, on coaching, and that ties directly into another critical element of this offseason: trust. There's been a lot of discussion about Jalen Hurts' willingness. His history tells you he's meticulous. He once described himself as a student who wants to learn. Lincoln Riley spent roughly 20 hours on the phone with him before he transferred to Oklahoma, diving deep into offensive vision and fit. That's not surface level preparation, that's commitment. Now enter offensive coordinator Sean Mannion into the equation. If this team drafts a dynamic but raw tight end, Mannion has to design a system that maximizes strengths while minimizing weaknesses early on. That requires trust between quarterback and play caller. It requires patience from fans. And it requires the front office to accept short-term growing pains for long-term payoff. At the same time, we can't ignore the alternative paths. If Sadiq is gone before 23, and many believe his combine performance may have pushed him out of range, the Eagles could pivot. Caleb Lomu at offensive tackle would fit the long-standing philosophy of drafting ahead of need, especially with Lane Johnson turning 36 and coming off a season where he missed 8 games. That's a practical, forward-thinking move. Or maybe the Eagles look defense in round 1. The safety class looks strong at the combine, and Dylan Thieneman has versatility, having played deep at Purdue with 6 interceptions before thriving closer to the line at Oregon. But would using a first-round pick there give you the same offensive impact? Then there's the financial chessboard. There has been outside chatter about potentially reshaping the roster in dramatic ways, including conversations tied to major contracts. Some analysts even floated aggressive scenarios about prioritizing multiple offensive additions, though those paths would require bold cap decisions. Meanwhile, rumors connecting the Eagles to Max Crosby have surfaced, but that would mean allocating significant resources to a defense that, by many accounts, was not the core issue in 2025. This is what makes the draft so pivotal. It's not just about talent, it's about identity. Do the Eagles double down on becoming even more explosive offensively? Do they lean into giving Jalen Hurts another matchup nightmare, especially if Goedert is gone? Do they trust that an elite athlete like Sadiq can evolve into a complete tight end with time? Or do they stay true to their long-term blueprint and build the trenches, protect the quarterback, and quietly prepare for life after aging veterans? What stands out most right now is that tight end is no longer a secondary conversation. It's front and center. For decades, this franchise hasn't invested a first-round pick at the position. The last time it happened was 1988. That alone tells you how significant this moment could be. If they pull the trigger on a player like Kenyon Sadiq, it signals a philosophical shift. It tells you they see the modern tight end as a premium weapon, not a complementary piece. It tells you they are ready to inject rare athleticism into the heart of the offense. But if they pass, it may mean they believe the value doesn't match the risk. It may mean they see another position as more urgent, or it may mean they simply don't think he'll be there when they're on the clock. This is the fork in the road. The future of the offense could hinge on one decision in the middle of the first round. Now, I want to hear from you. If the board falls in a way where Kenyon Sadiq is available, do you want the Eagles to prioritize replacing Dallas Goedert immediately with elite upside, or would you rather see them invest that pick somewhere else and address tight end later? And the deeper you look at this situation, the clearer it becomes that this is not just about one prospect or one roster spot. It's about how the Eagles view the evolution of their offense in 2026 and beyond. Think about how defenses are built right now. Linebackers are lighter and faster. Safeties are asked to cover more ground than ever. Hybrid defenders are becoming the norm. When you introduce a tight end who runs a 4.39 with a 43.5-inch vertical into that ecosystem, you're forcing defensive coordinators to make uncomfortable decisions. Do they treat him like a receiver? Do they bracket him with a safety? Do they try to jam him with a linebacker who might not have the foot speed to recover? That's the theoretical advantage of drafting someone like Kenyon Sadiq. You're not just adding a player, you're creating matchup stress. But roster construction is never that simple. The Eagles also have to weigh the fact that first-round picks are expected to contribute early. If Sadiq needs refinement, if the hands remain inconsistent, if the transition to NFL physicality takes time, then you're asking fans to be patient in a city that doesn't always love patience. Development curves matter, and that circles back to the quarterback. Jalen Hurts has consistently shown a willingness to adapt, to learn, to grind through growth phases. His background tells you he embraces structure and detail. If the front office believes that pairing Hurts with a rare athlete at tight end accelerates the offense's ceiling, then the gamble becomes easier to justify. A young, explosive tight end growing alongside a franchise quarterback can redefine what the passing game looks like 2 or 3 years from now. On the other hand, if the Eagles believe the offense's issues in 2025 were more about protection, rhythm, or depth at other skill positions, then investing at tackle or even wide receiver might feel more urgent internally than it appears from the outside. The Caleb Lomu scenario fits the organizational DNA. Draft the heir apparent, protect the future, avoid being caught off guard when a veteran declines or retires. There's also a psychological component to this draft cycle. The combine performance didn't just elevate Sadiq's stock, it shifted perception league-wide. When a prospect tests like that, teams start reevaluating their boards. Some fall in love with traits, others stick to tape. The Eagles' scouting department has to decide which side of that line they're on. And remember, they're picking at 23. That's not the top 10. That's not a guaranteed blue-chip slot. It's the range where value meets risk. Reaching slightly for upside can pay off massively. It can also backfire if refinement never catches up to athletic gifts. Meanwhile, free agency will continue to shape the board. If Dallas Goedert officially departs and no significant veteran replacement is added, that increases draft pressure. If the Eagles bring in a mid-tier option or restructure elsewhere to stabilize the room, it could give them flexibility to address a